Hey everyone, it's good to see you. Pastor David here. And I got Gina Melissa Harder. Say hi to everybody.
Hey everyone.
So there are, I was writing this earlier, and I kept writing our German missionaries, but that made it sound like you're German. And then I was like, is it Germany missionaries? That didn't sound right. So, I got to mute this. So we'll get into what they're here to talk about and get into a little more detail here in a second. But a couple things before we get there, a few things. Number one, you'll see on the screen, I always point the wrong direction, that way. Gene, point that way some more so they know. Right there is our poll, our Swift poll for today. And we're not going to show you the results until the very, very end of our live Q&A today. But I want you to get your phones out or go online. The instructions are right there on the screen. And the question is, which superpower would you most like to have? And you text option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. You got 6 choices. Number 1 is speed. Number 2 is flying. Number 3 is invisibility. Number 4 is strength. Number 5 is shape-shifting. And number 6 is mind reading. So we're going to leave that up just for a couple of minutes while you get the answers. And we're going to show you again the answers at the very end. What's your guys' answer? Jake, what did you say?
Mind reading.
Mind reading. I don't think I want mind reading. I don't want to know that much about it.
Mine's actually not on there. I want language.
Language, okay. Yeah. But of those 6, which would you choose?
I didn't listen to them.
Speed, flying, invisibility, strength, shape-shifting, mind reading.
Sure, mind reading.
Mind reading.
Strength. Let's go for that. Real manly thing.
I'd either want strength or flying. I'm probably going to go maybe flying. All right, so give your answers for that. I don't know, you guys have been faithfully watching, so you know what's coming next, right? On this day, on April 23rd, right? In 1789, U.S. President George Washington moved into Franklin House, New York. It was the first executive mansion. In 1908, U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt signed an act creating the U.S. Army Reserve. Thought that was kind of cool. 1945, the Soviet Army fought its way into Berlin. And in 1954, Hank Aaron of the Milwaukee Braves hit his first Major League home run on this day. That was a long time ago. In 1968, the Methodist Church and the Anglican United Brethren Church merged to form the United Methodist Church. I found one that was kind of church related, so I said we got to do that one, right? 1985, Coca-Cola announced that it was changing its 99-year-old secret formula. New Coke was not successful, which resulted in the resumption of selling the original version. Did you guys try New Coke?
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was not good at all. Why change something that has been working? I don't get it. 1988, a U.S. federal law took effect that banned smoking on flights that were under 2 hours. I found that interesting because I would have assumed it had been longer than that, but just 1988. A year later, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played his last regular season game in the NBA. In 1997, an infertility doctor in California announced that a 63-year-old woman had given birth in late 1996. The child was from a donor egg. The woman is the oldest known woman to have given birth, 63 years old. No, thank you. 2005, the first video was uploaded to YouTube.
I saw that today.
2005, the first ever. Now, here's the big trivia question. What was the first video? But I don't have that. 2009, iTunes reached 1 billion applications downloaded. And the rest is history. No one even gets on it anymore. Someone asked, what did we do? Oh, you said, what did we do before 2005? All right, here's some fun facts, which I don't know if they're actually fun. Banging your head against the wall for 1 hour. Guess how many calories that burns?
110.
110?
I was going to say 150.
150 on the dot.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yep. If you bang your head against the wall for 1 hour, it burns 150 calories. It snowed in the Sahara Desert for 30 minutes on February 18th, 1979, the only known time that it recorded. And it says, yes, it melted very quickly. Yeah, I can imagine. ABBA. You know ABBA?
Not personally.
Not personally. They turned down $1 billion to do a reunion tour. $1 billion in 2000. They were offered $1 billion to reunite for 100 shows, which would have been $250 million per member, and they turned it down, just said it wasn't for them. That's insane. Ronald McDonald, here was mine because it's an international thing and you guys are here. Okay. Ronald McDonald, do you know what he's called in Japan?
Ronald McDonald.
Donald McDonald.
Donald.
Yep.
Bet I can guess why.
You can't guess why. It's actually on the sheet, but I'm not going to say. May 29th is officially Put a Pillow on Your Fridge Day.
What?
I don't even know why that's a thing. But it is. So put a pillow on your fridge day, May 29th. All right, here's our funny story. Then we're going to get into the questions. Who said hi? Crash said hi. Hi, Crash. I got a question from Crash. It's coming here in a bit. Who else do we have saying good evening? Jacob Harder says, hey, I know those two. Anita said hi. Emily Burke says these two peeps on the right are very cute.
Thanks, Em.
Yeah. Come on, man. Throw me some love. All right, here's the funny story of the day. Preacher's Wife is the title. Anita, are you listening? A couple were going on a vacation together, but the wife had an emergency at work, so they agreed that he would go on as planned, and his wife would meet him at the hotel the next day. When the husband got to his hotel and had checked in, he thought he should send his wife a quick email letting her know that he'd gotten there okay. Very kind, right? Thoughtful. As he typed in her email address, he made a typo and his email was sent to an elderly preacher's wife instead. So it just so happened that her husband had sadly died just the day before. When the grieving preacher's wife checked her email, she read the one from the holiday maker, the man who was notifying his wife, let out an awful loud piercing scream and fainted on the floor. At the sound of her falling, her family rushed into the room. They tended to her and then looked at her computer and saw this email on her screen. Dearest wife, just checked into my room. Everything is prepared for your arrival tomorrow. P.S. It sure is hot down here. Yeah. All right. So I don't know whether that was actually funny or not, but there it is. Okay, Gina and Melissa, why don't you let everyone know, those who don't know, who are either watching live or who are watching after the fact, who you are. Give us a little update on yourselves, your family. For those who do know who you are, just kind of give us the 411 on everything Harder related.
Sounds great.
All right.
You gonna start?
Sure. Melissa, Jean Harder. We're missionaries in Germany, currently living in the United States. We have two kids, Jacob and Ashley. Jacob is 21, Ashley's 19.
And Jacob is watching.
Jacob is, I think Ashley, she was going to try.
Ashley, if you're watching, you need to comment in the comments so we know that you're here and attending school.
Yeah. I don't know. What else?
So yeah, we've been serving in Germany for 6 years. We are in the U.S. right now because of tax laws between Germany and U.S. We actually have to be away from Germany for 366 days. Our intention is to go back late July of this year. And we serve with Greater Europe Mission, and we're leading a team of 14 missionaries in southern Germany that are focused on really helping mission organizations and churches and different Christian groups within Europe grow. And we primarily do that by bringing short-term teams over to serve on a variety of projects, everything from construction to evangelism and outreach, refugee ministries, kids ministries, all kinds of different things.
And you originally, when you guys went to Germany, you had one particular role, and that's changed a little bit. Why don't you share with everyone kind of what you were doing and what you're doing now, how things have changed a little bit.
So we first went over, and we it's a longer story how we got there, but we went over there really with a heart to reach out to Germans and work with the German church. And when we arrived, it was late 2013, and then year and a half later, the refugee crisis sort of bubbled up, and so we also did a lot of work with refugees. And then you can say how we got
Yeah, so in those beginning years, we were partnered with another missionary family that was in the region that we were in. And we were working with our local church, and then really heavily started working with refugees as they were kind of flooding into Europe. And then transition over time, we started working with, we've actually changed organizations in the midst of all that, but we started working with Greater Europe Mission and getting plugged more into this ministry that we're part of now. And in November of 2018, I took over as director of this group called Gem Teams, which, like I said, there's 14 of us on that team. And it's been really, we also have been engaged with another pastor that a lot of you that are part of Pinecrest know, Pastor Eddie. And so he actually lives a couple hours from us, and we've had teams come from Pinecrest 3 times.
3, yep.
3 times.
And then I've been there, I think, another 3 times.
Yeah. Doing mission projects within his community in the city of Constance with his team that he's got there. So that's another area that we're pretty heavily engaged in right now.
And I think it's been cool to look back, because when we went there, we didn't know what we wanted to do at first. We just knew we wanted to reach out to the German people. But God almost immediately, within the first month really, like started moving us in that direction that he wanted us. And so just neat to see how we've transitioned.
Yep.
And where we are now really, we feel like uses the giftings that God's given us. So
It's exciting. And then COVID happened.
Yes.
Right? Coronavirus happened. So here's the deal. We're going to talk a little bit about how that has impacted them, their team in Germany, their plans to go back to Germany. We're going to talk about all of those things. We got some other questions that you guys have asked. But you can ask a question. You can ask a question of Gina, Melissa. Ashley's on. She said she's here
Hi,
too.
Ashley.
So the other thing I've been notified is Me at the Zoo was the first YouTube video downloaded. Stacy
Nice.
put that out. So thank you, Stacy. Now I've got to go home and watch that video.
Of course.
Assuming that it's still there. So if you have any questions for me, Bible-related, personal, church, my opinions on world affairs, whatever, or any of the same for Gina and Melissa, what's going on with them, any questions about mission work, the work that they're doing in Germany in general, anything you got, how to translate a German phrase into English,
geez.
whatever you got, they'll be more than happy to do that. So I'm going to start with one. I got 3 questions so far, so I'm going to start with one of these, and then I'm going to toss it to a question for you guys, all right? But
Okay.
you guys are more than welcome to answer these as well. So this question is from Kelly Elmore, who has been very faithful to send us a question every week, and I'm very thankful for that. She says, I have another question for Thursday. Her question is, did Jesus know from the time that he could comprehend what his entire life was going to be? Meaning, did he know that John the Baptist was going to be beheaded? Did he know that he would feed the 5,000? Did he know that Judas would betray him and Peter would deny him? Or are these things that God revealed to him like he does to us as he needed to know them? Here's my definitive answer, Kelly. I have no idea. But it's a good question. But I do have an opinion, I guess. My opinion would be, I think Jesus, and I think Scripture makes this clear, had an idea, at least by the time he began his ministry, what the overarching goal of his life, where he was going. So he knew that the cross was coming. He knew what he was there to do. Now, how early did he know that? Even when his parents lost him and he's at the temple, he says, I'm about my Father's business. So he certainly had a higher, at that age, he had a higher idea of what his life's purpose was about. I would assume that even at that point, he had an idea what he was on earth for. Did he know all of the fine details? My guess would be no. My guess would be that God, the Father, revealed those things to him over time and when he needed to know them, just like we do. And the reason I would say that, and again, I have no evidence of that. I have no proof of that. There's nothing in Scripture that talks about that. But Scripture does talk about that he wanted to experience things the way that we experience them. So that would be my estimation, is that he did that so that, and Scripture is clear that he didn't know everything. I mean, he even said, I don't know, only the Father knows the day or the hour of his return.
But he clearly did know some things.
Right, he did know some things.
At certain points along the way.
Like Kelly outlines. He did know that Judas would betray him, because he tells Judas, you're about to betray me. He tells Peter, you're going to deny me. And not just that you're going to deny me, but
here's the details.
Right. And here's how you'll know when it happened, right? So God certainly revealed certain things to him. I think Kelly's question is, when did those things happen? We don't know for sure. Scripture's not clear. It doesn't say one way or the other. But I'm going to assume he was always praying. He was always having conversations with God. So my estimate is that in those times is when those things were revealed. What do you guys think? And you can say ditto. Or you can say,
I would agree with that. I mean, in some ways, it seems like if he knew all those things too early on, he wouldn't have been as effective in his ministry. In some ways,
would have been heavy to know all that stuff.
Carry all that. Yeah. Here's the question for you all. What do you all think? Because it's one of those questions that doesn't have a definitive answer, so I'm not necessarily right, but I'm also not necessarily wrong, so don't make that assumption. All right, I actually got a question for you. Robert Callahan, I think you just saw them, didn't you?
We
Yes.
did.
Yeah. From a distance, saw
Yes.
them. He asked, what do you miss the most about Germany? Food, place, bike route?
I have to say, I love Colorado. I really love Colorado, but
I'm with you.
but Germany, just I don't know. It's home. It's just walking around in the woods and the trails, and yeah, I miss that.
Yeah, and I think for me, I mean, Melissa and I have been talking about it the last few days. It's felt more and more like home the longer we've been there. So right now we feel like we're missing home. You know, we're in this place where, yeah, we're here for a year, which sounds like a long time, but it actually doesn't give us an opportunity to really engage in community, engage in the things around us.
Right.
So I miss the feeling of home. And I know Rob's asking about bike rides too, because I definitely miss the Endenburg Loop, which he rode with me when they visited. So
Stacy answered and said she misses the food.
yeah.
I think I miss the food too. Yeah, you can't go wrong. Maybe even the ice cream. The ice cream shop on the shore with the spaghetti.
Just
ice
spaghetti
cream.
ice. Yes.
Yeah, spaghetti ice. That was
Ice
pretty
cafe.
good. Ice cafe, right? Yeah. So that's a good story from one of our. I think that was our first trip, right? I think Stacy was on that trip when we ordered iced coffee. But iced coffee, ice is ice cream, so they brought coffee with ice cream.
Vanilla
a
ice
scoop
cream.
And when we ordered it, she looked at us kind of funny, but we were very insistent Americans. She's like, okay, whatever you want. Brought a cup of coffee, piping hot coffee,
Yeah.
with a scoop of ice cream in it, and it was amazing. If you haven't tried it, you got to try it. It'll change your
In
life.
case you don't get enough calories from however you do have your coffee right now.
Yeah. Stacy says, seriously, if she could get the German language down, she'd move there. She loves it. She loves the people. Stacey,
All right, let's start the German language lessons.
Yeah,
We're
the
ready.
language thing can be overcome. There is definitely a way to make that happen.
We're proof.
Exactly.
All right, so here's a question for you, and this is one you asked me to ask you, so you shouldn't be surprised by it. What is the state of your team in Germany? So you've got a team both there, and I assume there's some dispersed beyond Germany. So what is the state
So we have,
of the mission field right now?
Yeah, Gene said there's 14 of us, but actually 6 of us are in the U.S. and Canada right now. For HMA for the same purpose that we are. So they've been working from home for about 6 weeks now, and although they're not leading teams, they're doing their couple of weekly check-ins. They're still doing personal development. They're still doing a lot of the things that we often can't do because we're leading teams.
Right.
That still needs to get done. So trying to take advantage of this time.
I think it's been a good time, but it's also been a hard time. I mean, all of us can relate, right? We're in a similar situation. It's been neat to sort of get a perspective on what's happening there. We've got 2 people, Matt and Jessica, that are doing a great job leading the team in Germany while we're away, and just to see what they've developed during those 6 weeks on how they're remaining cohesive as a team, how they're prioritizing, different. It can sound kind of boring, but there are like some policies and procedures and different things that we need to really hone in on and get better at to lead teams better and more efficiently as we go forward. So they've been able to work on some of those things. And they've been spreading around, it's given them an opportunity to really spread around some of the team development type things. Like they've handed off leading a weekly sort of team development time to a couple guys on our team that are doing a great job. And they're gonna work through the team and have different people lead our team in different ways.
Everyone's healthy?
Everyone is healthy. I know some of them are going stir crazy because they're more social than others. We do have some introverts too that are loving it. But yes, everybody's healthy. We have one of our families is, in some sense, they're stuck in Canada right now. They had intended to go to Canada just for a few weeks to meet with some ministry partners and things, and it turns out they're going to be staying there longer, potentially through the end of the summer.
So another family is in California, and they were supposed to start their year this summer, and they were going to go to Greece first. So they started driving to Greece, and they got to Slovenia, and they heard at the hotel where they were staying.
This was in March, early March.
That Croatia was going to maybe close their borders, and they were about to get into Croatia, and they decided to turn around and go back to Condern instead. So they got back to Condern, and then they said, well, I guess we'll start our year now instead of waiting 3 more months. So they called the airline, and I don't know the timing exactly, but within about 24 hours, they were on a flight to the U.S. So now they're in the U.S. starting their year as well.
Hey, if you got to do a year, you might as well do 3 months of it in lockdown, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm getting some questions online for you guys, which is great. And by the way, Jake is the one who said that cheese is everything. Jake's answer is that cheese in Germany is everything. That's what he misses.
Okay.
So Emily and Tim, I guess they're together, are asking, in what cool ways have you seen God working in your lives or in the people you work with during the quarantine?
Yeah. So we have a couple different stories about what we've heard through different missionaries at Greater Europe Mission, and one of them is some missionaries that work in the UK. And when it came getting closer to Easter, they wrote little notes and they put them in their mailboxes of all their neighbors. And it's just like here, you don't know your neighbors, it's hard to get to know them. How do you reach out to them? And so they put these notes in, and they said, please join us, come out onto your lawn, and we'll just do a Sunday Easter worship service. And they had 15 families in their immediate area come out. So
who would not normally go to church.
Who would not?
Would not normally go to church, and in the setting, in the city that they're in, would be pretty difficult to reach, I would say. And I know as Americans we can relate to that too. It's hard, you might get to know your immediate neighbor, or you connect with one but not 15. And so that was a pretty neat story. Another thing that we've seen happen organizationally, we've actually had, from almost day one of when things started locking down, they started a virtual online prayer time 2 times a day. It's morning in Europe and morning in North America. And we have, I think they average around 40 people that call into that. And it's just been a really powerful time to come together as an organization and pray for each other and pray for what's going on around the world.
Well, and it's not just Greater Europe Mission. Like anybody, if y'all want time to pray, it's every morning, and you can just contact us and we can let you know how to get involved with that. And it's just a great time. It's just worship and prayer and just all that.
Good.
Yeah.
And then, can I tell one more?
Yep, of course.
We have time?
Yep.
Another really cool story is a guy that I know. His name's Živko. He's Bulgarian, and he's a missionary with Greater Europe Mission. That's another neat thing about Greater Europe Mission. We actually have missionaries, not just North American missionaries, but we have European missionaries as well. So Živko leads a church in Bulgaria that has normally an attendance of around 100 people. A few weeks ago, he's been streaming. A few weeks ago, he topped out at about 3,000 people that logged in live around the world. And, just to think, here's this guy who's committed to his local community, committed to his local church, who suddenly has influence over thousands of people, probably native Bulgarian-speaking people that are dispersed throughout who knows where, are logging into his church service.
They had no other way to hear an in-language service before, probably.
Right.
Yep.
So
and I think we're seeing that kind of everywhere. We're seeing, even in the U.S., we're reaching people that probably we never would have reached before. Easter, we had almost 18,000 people log in. And that's the right number, right? 1,800, I think. Jacob was like, "You liar!" 1,800. Yeah, I got to make it. I'm a pastor, so I got to pad the numbers, right? So yeah, there's opportunity. That's a fantastic. It reminds me of something you guys. I don't know if you remember us telling us the work that you're doing with refugees, right? Praying about getting into Syria. How can we get the gospel into Syria?
Yeah.
And essentially, God created an environment where we couldn't get in, so He sent the Syrians out. Right. So that they could hear the gospel. So I think a lot of the same thing is happening right now. I know people this sucks. It's not fun. It's terrible. But God is using it to reach people in ways we could never have imagined, never had an opportunity to do before. So we're going to take advantage of that while we've got it, right?
Yeah.
A couple of other questions for you. Stacy asked, did missionaries have to go to their home country when COVID hit?
No.
No. Most missionaries stayed put where they were. We did have Greater Europe Mission specifically, if they were interns or short-term service, which is usually less than a year, we did actually bring some of those people home because it was case dependent, but many of those people came home because they were going to be potentially having to try to come home in the middle of a worse time.
Yeah.
But our full-time missionaries, I think virtually everyone stayed put.
As far as
I do know a couple cases of people from other organizations that chose to come back to the U.S. during this time, or their home country, like you asked. But that was more their personal choice. It wasn't necessarily a requirement.
I think it gets hard because like we have college-age kids, and so if we were there in Germany, would we have come back? I don't know.
Right.
But it would have been a hard decision.
Right. But it would have been a choice, not
Yes.
nobody forced anyone. It was pretty much, if you're here, be ready to stay here.
Yes.
Right.
You're not leaving.
Right.
Yeah, and they say in Germany we get the U.S. Embassy alerts, and they say if you don't leave, be ready to stay in Germany for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I got some more, but I got a couple other questions I got to answer, and man, this is from Crash, and this is a good one, but it's a tough one. She said, when I pray, and I'm going to have you guys answer this one because it's a tough one.
Oh,
when
thanks.
I pray, I feel like the most meaningful prayers I say are only when I say them in my head or when I don't say them at all. But when I try to say it out loud, either I lose all train of thought or I pray in the complete opposite direction of what I intended to pray for. I also heard somewhere, I don't remember where, that if you don't say your prayer out loud, that it's not as powerful. I do believe that saying it out loud has its power, but I struggle when it comes to speaking out loud to God. My question is there more power when you speak out of prayer, and how can I focus more on the prayer? I struggle with saying the words that come into my mind, and I think that I get scared that I'll say the wrong word out loud. So the first thing I'll say is I think that idea of praying out loud, and Linda Ronnie's on, so I'm going to expect her to give an answer to this as well, because she's our prayer warrior. It is a that idea of me praying out loud. If I want to panic somebody, I'll ask them to pray, like come up onto the stage and pray. And Stacy is giving a amen to this question. So here's the first question is there literally more power in our prayers when we speak them? I don't think so, because the power is not in the vocalization. It's not in us. The power comes from God. So God doesn't need us to speak it in order for it to have power. But I do think there is, at the same time, I do think there is something about saying something out loud, about worshiping and singing out loud. Can you worship in your heart? Yes. But there's something, God says, you get back to Genesis, he says he spoke the world into existence. So there is something about the spoken word, but the main thing I'd say is don't let that discourage you from praying. However is the most effective way for you to pray. People ask me all the time, last week we talked, what Bible version should I use? And the answer is the one that you'll use, right? Mm-hmm. The one that you'll read. What's the right way to pray? There's no wrong way except to not pray at all. But it's a good question. It's a tough one. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think I've struggled with it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it's just trying to step outside your box sometimes, and just the more and more that you do it, I think the easier it becomes. I think some people that have known me longer and have known me before when I was more nervous to pray out loud, I still get nervous to pray out loud, but the people that know me before that, they've even said how I've seen you progress in that. So I think it's part of it's just a doing it and make yourself
practice,
do it.
yeah.
Practice.
Yeah, and I think part of it is a shift from being concerned about saying the right words so that the people around you can hear the right words,
right,
in more of saying the right words that connects you with God and
right,
are directed at Him.
Yeah, so I'd say, Crash, if it's the internal dialogue is more effective, then let that be more effective. But at the same time, don't give up the spoken thing. Linda says it's not more powerful out loud, but it may bless more people, which is for sure. In some ways, we got to get over am I trying to impress people? And Jesus says, if you're just trying to say words out loud to impress them, then you've accomplished your goal and the game is over. Your prayer is done, right? But if you're trying to speak to God and have a conversation with Him, I don't know that He matters. There is one minor exception that I'll give to that, and that is when you're rebuking some evil spirit. I think there is power in speaking the name of Jesus. There's power there, but the power is not in me speaking it. The power is in His name, but His name should be spoken, right? But you could also do that internally if there's something going on. But again, that's power for somebody else to receive. That's an intercessory prayer on somebody's behalf. So that might be the one exception that a definitive exception that I give. But yeah, number one is you got to know, Christ, you're not alone. I think most people struggle with praying out loud. I didn't like praying out loud when it's still not my favorite thing, and I'm a pastor and I'm supposed to, right? All right, let's see. What do we got? Do you think that COVID-19 softens the Germans' heart and is leading them to be more open to the gospel? Robert is asking that question.
Well, I mean, it's a tough one to answer yet, right? But I do think, back to what you were saying before, we do see more people engaging. We know things like Pastor Eddie in Constance has really been putting a lot of effort into, because he's really about community, he's really about connecting with people, and so he's been finding ways to do that by doing streaming interviews with different people. Like he interviewed a doctor, a leader of a local company, and different things, just to kind of talk through, okay, what is the impact of COVID, and how is your faith impacting the way that you're reacting to it? So those kinds of things are happening. In general, I feel like we've been seeing things. We've been seeing Germans more open to the gospel, even in the 6 years that we've been there, just through making an effort to really engage with them, making an effort to, for us, like learning the language and different things like that, just engaging with them on an everyday kind of basis. I say every day because they say Alltag, which means all day, every day. Basically, it's in their daily lives. Being in their daily lives is shown a huge impact to us.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I noticed, and when we first started getting involved with you guys in Germany, and people asking me, why are we going to Germany? It's not a third world country, right? And I've learned to answer that question just because it's a first world. In fact, in a lot of cases, I think first world countries are more difficult to evangelize because people have become convinced that they don't need God. God is irrelevant. Right. Science takes over any kind of faith-based thing. A thing like this, and I think this is true in America, and I'm going to assume it's true in Germany, but I'll let you guys know, is that a crisis like this draws us to our knees. It draws us to, okay, I'm not all that in a bag of chips, to use an American phrase. I don't know what the German equivalent would be. So people are starting to turn to look for an answer outside of the normal stuff that is now broken down.
And I think, too, they're also we're seeing signs up around the town where we live, like, all is going to be good, is what they say.
Alles wird besser. And then there's like a heart shape, and people are hanging them in their windows around town, and I think it's just
bringing everybody together, too.
Yep. Creating a sense of community.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, here's a really tough. Augie, I can always count on Augie to ask a tough one. But I have the answer, Augie. Where did it go? Where did Augie say? Okay, Augie asks, by the way, hi, Augie. Do people or kids who have never heard of Jesus go to heaven? That's a two-part question. So, I'll answer the easier of the two first. Do children who've never grown up to have heard the gospel go to heaven? And the answer is yes. There's a thing we talk about is the age of accountability, when someone becomes consciously aware of the sin in their lives is when they become responsible for it. So if you're not aware of it, then you're not responsible for it. Now, if you ask me what are the mechanics, what are the technical side, I don't know, you got to ask God that, because that's God's grace being bestowed, not my grace. But do people, so if we're not talking about kids now, so someone beyond the age of accountability, does that person go to heaven if they've never heard the gospel? And the answer is no, they do not. And Paul actually talks about this. He says there is no excuse. You can, at the very bare minimum, you can look at the world that we live in and see the evidence of God in the world that we live in. You should turn your heart towards God in that case. And it should put a fire, and as missionaries, it should put fire under us, because that means if they have not heard the gospel and we didn't share the gospel with them, then I'm in some way responsible for that, because I didn't take the time to share with them the good news that could have kept them from a faith that they're, even in some ways we would say, they're unaware of, right?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, I will take that opportunity. He said us as missionaries. Just remember, we're all missionaries. Yes. Don't forget that.
That's right. You're right. That's my bad. Okay, here's another question for you guys. What do you think the impact, both, I know we know what the short-term impact is to short-term mission teams, right?
Right.
There aren't any. What do you think are going to be the lingering, more longer-term effects on mission trips to Germany or anywhere, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we've been talking about as a team and within the organization and everything too. I think it's an opportunity for us to reevaluate and dream about what missions can be like in the future. Yeah,
and I think obviously there's going to be, there's the immediate impact like David was talking about. We've essentially postponed teams that were scheduled all the way out through July now and likely longer. Then there's going to be some lingering impact. At what point will, for example, if Americans go to Europe, will they be asked to self-quarantine for a certain period of time prior to serving? That could linger for a while. We're really...
2 weeks, right? So you got to go quarantine for 2 weeks, do your mission trip, come back, and then probably be quarantined again.
Yes.
Yeah,
in the U.S.
And in some cases, that might not be the government; it might be your employer saying you were out of the country, you can't come back to work until that's over. So
1 week trip turned into 5.
Yeah. So what is that going to look like, and how long will that last? So that's a great question that I don't have the answer to. The one thing I will say is, in the communications that we've been having with teams that we've either canceled or postponed, just this desire to serve still. So I think this will potentially awaken some of that, that there still will be this renewed drive to serve on a short-term team. We'll just have to talk about the logistics and legalities side of when can we start doing that. Now, the neat thing is, because our team is bigger and we're based in Europe, we're actually looking at, as a team of missionaries that are located in Europe, can we go serve some of the sites that we had to cancel teams for? Can we be a service to them in some way? So we've already started to plan some of that. We're also looking at something we've been striving for, is trying to mobilize more Europeans to serve in other places in Europe. And so this may open up some opportunities for that as well, where rather than people traveling across the ocean, we can actually have people traveling within Europe.
Right. Yeah, and we've been reading a lot about, as you talk about how do we do church and what are the lingering effects of church on churches here in the U.S. and literally around the world. It's causing innovation, right?
Yeah.
To your point, Melissa, we got to start rethinking what does it look like, and I think there are going to be opportunities that we, even sitting here right now, can't even imagine, because you can't go too far down the road because you don't know what those obstacles are. But as those obstacles become reality, here's what humans do. Americans do it. Humans do it in general. We find ways to make what needs to happen happen.
Yeah.
So if it still needs to happen, we'll figure it out. We'll find a way to do it.
Well, and I think it's in the heart of a lot of Americans, a lot of Christians, like Gene said, to serve.
Yep.
And so I don't think short-term teams are going to end.
Right.
This could be different.
Maybe some of that energy right now will be turned, like you're saying, not only in Europe, but here, turned inward.
Correct.
Yeah.
So how can we affect our community? And we're seeing that with food pantries going crazy. Every time I go out to the locker, the mechanical room out there, it's full to the brim. So people want to engage, and this does bring that out of them. It'll be interesting to see how it does affect them.
And that's one way, we are, like with the teams that are being postponed, we're also encouraging them to do just those things. Like, now that you can't be serving overseas, start to think about how you can be serving locally within your neighborhood or within your church or whatever.
And we're actually also trying to connect those teams that were more near-term going, that they could still connect with the ministry site and that they could still encourage the ministry site and really hear about what's going on, know how to pray for them.
Just engage in a different way.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, I've got my third question. This is my last question here. Still got a couple more for you guys, but it's the last question someone's asked me. So if you got one, get it in. Kathy asks, and I think I saw Kathy. Did we see? Is Kathy online? Yeah. Roncalia? Yeah. Okay. She asked. You might have already answered this last week. I did not, or the week before. I did not, and I missed it. But it says in the Apostles' Creed, it says Jesus descended into hell. But when we studied the scriptures with you during Holy Week, it didn't say that anywhere that I looked. So, did he descend into hell, or is that not true? And if it is true, where does Scripture say that? Any ideas, any thoughts, Melissa? This was your theological question to answer.
Yeah, I grew up learning the Apostles' Creed, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I had to look it up. So, and we actually did a series here. How long ago did I say it was, Jake?
I don't know.
Like 2 years ago, maybe? We did the Apostles' Creed. We walked through the Apostles' Creed, and I went back to look at my notes to see if we had touched on that, and I didn't. I wimped out.
You just skipped it?
And skipped over it. Yeah. The reasoning was we were trying to focus on the core of the Apostles' Creed. Here's what I found out, Kathy. There is a very simple answer. It does not say that anywhere in the Gospels. In fact, so the Apostles' Creed, and just a little history, was not written by the Apostles. It was written far after. The Nicene Creed would have come first. The Apostles' Creed came later. And it was really just an idea. The reason it's called the Apostles' Creed is it's what we think they would have said, right? If they did write something, what would they have written? But the interesting thing is, so the part of the Apostles' Creed, I should have written it down because I'm going to have to go by memory, says he was crucified, he died, he was dead for 3 days, then he descended into hell, and then he rose again. That descended into hell part came hundreds of years after the original version of the Apostles' Creed. The first time it really comes up, that concept of him going into hell came up around 400 AD. So literally a few hundred years after the Apostles' Creed, and wasn't adopted into the Apostles' Creed until 750 AD. Wow. So another 350 years after that, it gets inserted by the Catholic Church. So it becomes a very important concept or ideal to the Catholic Church. The only place you'll find it scripturally, well, there's kind of two, but one is in Ephesians, but I looked that up and no. So it's a real stretch to make that one fit. Would be in 1 Peter 3:18 through 22. And it talks about him having gone after he died. He went to the prisons and preached the gospel there. And a lot of people think that term meant he went to hell. And so the reason it's very important for the Catholic Church is it's this idea of purgatory, right? And so that he went to purgatory and released those in purgatory out and descended into hell. But theologically, it is not an important doctrine, at least for the Protestant Church. It's not an important doctrine. Whether he went to hell or not does not matter. He died and rose again. That's the part that matters, right? So the reason you didn't find it there is because it's not there. None of the Gospels give any hint of it at all. It's that one spot in Peter, and of course the Catholic Church could pick up on something Peter said because they believe he was the first pope, right? So is it a thing that really affects anything one way or the other? No, it's an interesting idea. But the other thing to keep in mind is the Apostles' Creed is not gospel. It's written by man to lay out some of the things that we believe, but it's not inerrant. It's not perfect. Like we would say Scripture is perfect. You got to go back to the Gospels. So Kathy, you're asking the right question. Do the Gospels, does Scripture in general talk about it? And it doesn't. So that's that
Good
answer.
Question.
Anything you guys want to add to that?
Nope.
Okay. Nope. Out of that one. All right. Here's the next big question for you. Tell us a little bit about your situation. You were supposed to go back in July. Right? That's when your year is up. And man, it has been fast.
I know.
It's just gone by like that, especially with stuff going on now.
Yeah.
So what are the obstacles that stand in your way of getting back? Do you think you're still going to get back? And what are some ways we can be praying for that, be thinking about it, supporting you in that effort?
Well, the good news is, as of a couple days ago, our plane ticket is still valid. They haven't canceled it.
So tentatively, you're still on.
Yes.
I forgot the first part of the question.
Just what's your situation? Let's go back in July. What's standing in the way?
So we got here in July, and we really didn't. We had a lot of travel the first half, and then we were going to spend the second half doing more of our fundraising and connecting with people and really connecting with Pinecrest and reconnecting with Pinecrest. And so, unfortunately,
Which has been awesome.
Yeah, except that, we're sitting at home doing it online.
For the last part.
So we're super bummed that we haven't been able to do this second part. We had a fabulous first 6 months. Like, we got to see our friends up in the Seattle area and Greensboro area and places I'm forgetting, I'm sure. But we had a great first 6 months, and then this happened, and so it's pretty frustrating.
And I think, at the moment, our plan is still to go back in July. We, like Melissa said, our plane tickets aren't canceled as long as Germany will allow us in and allow us to apply for our residency permits again. We're going. We do have, Melissa mentioned the fundraising side, we are short on our budget. And if we go back in July, there's a chance we're going back underfunded, which would be not a great place to be. So, the things that we need prayer for right now are really, that Germany will have their borders open in a way that'll allow us to return. There isn't anything in place right now that wouldn't allow us to return, but we just, how things
But
change.
no one's even asking the question right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just prayer that remains open. And then really, our favorite and best way to really engage with people and let them hear more about our ministry is face-to-face. And that obviously right now just isn't possible. And so just prayer that we can really connect with people, really help people understand what God's doing in Europe, and just how they can join us as being part of that team.
Right, and in going back, there's really two sides to it, right? Will Germany allow it, and what are the U.S. rules about traveling and coming back and forth and all that? And then probably the finances, which is, part of the reason you come back, because you had to come back, but there's also this cyclical nature of financial support for missionaries, right? So people, I don't know if people get bored or they just move on to something else or whatever it is, and you depend 100%, right, on financial support from people. And we're going to talk about how people can do that here in a little bit. But that is probably the biggest thing, is for 6 months, you can't do that, right? You're supposed to be going out and raising funds. So what I want you all to be thinking about and praying about, and what we're going to talk about here in a little bit, is how we can best support, how you can get on board supporting them. And every little bit helps, right? I think people think, well, I can't give a huge amount. Irrelevant. Because if 10 people give $50 or $10, right, it starts to add up. And every little bit does help. So be thinking about, we're going to talk about that more here in a little bit. So, but Amy is asking you a question that kind of goes along with that. How best can we support you personally while you're still here? How best can we encourage you during this time?
I can take a big hug once we get out of this.
Careful, Amy might drive up here right now and give you one.
I think, so we're in the United States right now, and I understand that we're all staying at home in our own homes, but in some ways I feel like I could be in Germany right now, the same thing. Like, that's how far away I feel from everybody. And it's really difficult, at least for me it is. And so I think just encouragement, or just a note, or just a message, or we send out a newsletter each month, and just the nature of newsletters, you don't always hear much response from people, and that's just how it is, and that's fine. We do have a couple people that are very constant, but as we've sent newsletters out these last couple months, we've gotten more responses back, and I love that. And I'll write back again, and it doesn't have to be a long conversation, but it's just very encouraging to hear just a little word here and there.
Yeah, we did a sit down. We did a virtual dinner with Gina and Melissa. Was that
last
yesterday?
night?
Last night.
And it's good. Good for you guys. Good for us. Good for everybody. Right. So reaching out Anything else you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing is just, be praying about the things that we were talking about already. And as Melissa mentioned, just those small notes, we'd really, it's hard because we are writing a newsletter. We're trying to let people know what's happening, what's going on. So it doesn't feel like a dialogue, but we'd love for it to be a dialogue when it's appropriate. Go ahead and send us a quick response. If we ask you if you have something we can be praying about, we'd love to be praying for you as well. So it's not, we don't want it to just be a one-way relationship. So that's another thing for us is just allowing a little bit of that back and forth support for each other is really meaningful to us as well.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good time, Jake. Why don't you put up their contact information? So we're going to give you, what'd you give us, phone number?
And email. Yep.
So, and I assume you can get texts on that?
Yes.
Texts, make a phone call. You can make a phone call. Zoom meetings. You guys want to do Zoom meetings,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So if you would have sat down to have dinner or lunch or coffee and have a conversation about how you can support Gene and Melissa, make that happen. So here's my challenge for you all. I'm looking right there. Is you reach out to them. Don't ask them. Make them come to you and say, "I'd like to talk. I'd like to pray with you. I'd like to hear about how we can support and be an active support for that." So the number Jake just put up is Gene's phone number?
Yeah, it's mine.
Specific, so that you know who you're texting.
Yeah.
It's Gene's number.
He can give you mine.
and Gene's email as well, but they share them all the time. So.
Yeah. Well, and also I want to say, like you said, to support us, but really it's a partnership.
Yep.
And we have the most fabulous partners, and we were looking at them again today. I love looking through the partners, and we know we have stories with each one, and our partners are super dear to us. Like it's like an extended family, and I really love that, and it's important.
I agree with that. I'm just talking about this side of that partnership. You all, right? And if you think, well, I could never. If you've been on a mission trip, you should be supporting missionaries. If you've not been on a mission trip, you should be supporting missionaries, because if you've been, you know what it's like. And if you haven't, they're in a lot of ways standing in for you. And we all are missionaries. So I'm talking about if you're foreign missionary kind of stuff. So, make that happen. Right? We're going to come back to that in a second. But I've had one other question that has come up. Governor Polis yesterday did a lot of talking about how things are going to look as things unfold. I've had some people ask, what does that mean for us as a church, for all of us? And I actually was on a call. I keep saying I had a call with Governor Polis, which makes it sound very personal. It's not. I simply joined a call that Governor Polis was hosting specifically with faith leaders so that he could answer some very direct questions about how we can get back. So here's kind of where it stands. May 26th is the end, is when
April.
What's that? April, yeah, thank you. April 26th is when the current stay-at-home statewide order expires. So at midnight on the 26th, which in effect means on the 27th, we're going into what he's calling safer at home, which is starting to open up a few things. Some other businesses can begin to open. Some non-essential employees can start going back to work, although he's still saying if you can work from home, work from home. If you've been working from home and there's no vital reason for you to get back out, stay working at home. So he's really saying let's try not to change anything we don't have to, basically. And that county rules will start to take over beginning the 27th. So counties, we're in Tri-County area, and they have not issued their guidelines yet, but they will. But what I will tell you is their guidelines before stay at home were more strict than the statewide guidelines that came out. So, and I even saw Westminster basically told their people, don't get excited because we're about to issue guidelines that are stricter than the ones you're currently living under. So don't think that everything's opening back up, which I think Polis tried to say 15 different ways yesterday. More directly for us as a church, when will we start to be able to meet again? He was not able to answer that, but he could answer when we will not be able to meet, and that is during the entire month of May. He's saying absolutely, it's at most groups of 10, and he does not want and is still asking, it's not a rule, but the county rule, I will tell you this, the county rule will go into effect, that we not meet at least through May. The earliest anything could happen would be in June, but I'm just going to be honest, based on the conversations, the way that he was talking, some questions that got asked, it is the more likely scenario is maybe in June, but not really, possibly in July, but doubtful, probably more like August. But all of that depends on what the numbers look like. What does the curve look like? Has there been a spike? Is there, are we keeping the numbers down? And what does testing look like? There's a lot of things we just don't know yet. So the only thing we know for sure is May is not going to happen, which nobody likes. We were talking about this is our fifth one of these, right? Or fourth or fifth one of these. And I did not imagine we'd be doing more than a couple of them. But that's kind of where we stand. So just kind of give you kind of the lay of the land. I'll talk about that a little more on Sunday to the larger audience. All right, here's the last question for you guys. How can we help? And we talked about this a little bit, but what are the best ways for people to engage with you? We talked about Zoom meetings, engage in support. Is the best thing literally for them to reach out via text or email, phone call?
I think
get
so.
that started.
I mean, and we also have the Hearters in Germany. If you search the Hearters in Germany on Facebook, you'll find our group that you can join as well.
It's a group?
Yeah, okay. There's a group. And
we love to sit down, whether it's, face to face, preferably obviously, but over Zoom, and just have a conversation. Like, I think you can ask lots of questions, and I think we just get to know each other. And
to get on our newsletters, we send them out every 4 to 6 weeks. That if you just send me a text or an email with your email address, we can get you added on.
And they're digital.
And so it's just a good old MailChimp e-newsletter that goes
Just
out.
let you know you want on it, and they'll be on it. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. All right, one last thing, and then I want to pray for you guys and pray for you guys and gals. I shouldn't be sexist. Don't forget, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be baking cookies live. Now, Stacy said, David, I didn't get to shop for the cookie ingredients. Please deliver baked goods to me at my home as soon as you can. Nice. And the answer is no chance. Those cookies will be gone in a hurry. But if you did not get ingredients, that's okay. The point was not that everyone has to bake the cookies. It's that you see that process. I put the recipe out there. It's great if you want to follow along. But 2 o'clock tomorrow, I'll be baking cookies live on the air and doing the whole... I never wanted to be a televangelist, but I might have wanted to be a Food Network star. So maybe we'll see if that can happen.
We picked the wrong day to be guests.
You did. Yeah, absolutely. Emily says, thank you for supporting and loving on the Hearters. Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's our
thank you.
pleasure. We've loved you guys for forever. Stacy says, come on. Not going to happen, Stacy. I'll send you a box of Oreos. Okay, let me pray. Father God, we just thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with Gene and Melissa and with Ashley and Jacob virtually. And I just pray for this family, for the situation they find themselves in. We're all in a difficult situation, but they're in this spot where they want to get back to Germany and get back to doing the work that you've called them to, that you've equipped them to do. But Father, there are big obstacles standing in the way. There's a global pandemic standing in the way. There are financial obstacles standing in the way. There's questions about their kids getting back into school later in the fall, and just huge question marks around that. They're even not all together right now as a family, and dealing with the isolation for those who want to be out sharing the gospel and doing the work that you've called them to. So Father, first and foremost, I pray that you give them encouragement and hope and guidance through this time, and that you would remove these obstacles. There is no obstacle that ever stands in the way of your gospel, and we're just claiming that in faith. Just praying that you would tear down the obstacles for them getting back to Germany, that you'd tear down any financial obstacles, that you'd help us to be a part of solving that particular obstacle for them, and that you'd begin to open doors, and pray that this will be an opportunity as they do get back into Germany for them, for their team that's in Germany now, for short-term teams that'll be spinning up, whenever that opens up again, and for those in Europe, that you'll give us some new, innovative, creative ways by the guidance guidance of your Spirit to share the gospel with people who are ready and willing to hear it in ways they never were before. So, Father, I just got to believe that you've called them to Germany. It's where their heart is. It's what you've placed, the burden you've placed in them. And I just pray that you would remove every obstacle that is going to stand in the way of them being obedient to the call that you've placed on their hearts and on their lives. And we just are so thankful that we get to be a part of that. And we're going to thank you and praise you in advance for the answers that you are already at work to provide. And just, again, thank you for them. Pray your blessings on them, on their family. Just strengthen and encourage and guide them during this time. Same for everybody who's watching. Whatever situation they're in, I pray for your blessing, for your strength, your encouragement, the move of your Spirit into the hearts and minds of the families in this community. And we ask for your healing, for your protection, your guidance over us. And it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Okay, Amen. We do have one more thing before we leave. You remember we started with the poll. Do we have the poll results, Jake?
Yes.
He's frantically trying to get those poll results up. So we're looking to see.
I think flying.
So
Is flying gonna win?
So that's, how do we see it? So maybe go to the settings, that little button on the left, and turn it off the instruction mode. Nope, go back. Yeah, that one. Live and in person, folks. Yeah, turn off instruction. There we go. So what does it say? I can't read that from here.
Number one
No.
is number 5, which was shape-shifting.
Shape-shifting is number 1. By what percentage?
So it is really close. No one wanted speed, invisibility, or strength. So you were the only one, Gene.
Yeah.
Everyone else wanted shape-shifting 34%, mind reading 33%,
Ooh.
flying 33%. So in reality,
It's really almost a tie between
it's
flying,
probably a tie, and
mind
the
reading,
system
and shape-shifting.
had to get
Shape-shifting.
System had to pick one winner,
Yeah.
but they all tied.
And just
Wow.
so there you have it. There's your results. And we're going to be doing this on Sunday in preparation for Sunday. We're going to have 3 questions on Sunday, but you all get to choose the final song during the worship set. So we're going to give you a choice of 3 songs, and you're all going to vote on the worship song that we're going to do at the very end. Now, you don't get to choose anything. It's not an open book. Jake has to be ready to be able to do that. But you'll have 3 songs Sunday. That's the first thing we'll give you an opportunity for. So come ready for that. Gene and Melissa, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great day. And in case you didn't know, the NFL draft is live right now. So go check out. I don't know if the Broncos have chosen or not, but we'll find out here in a second. God bless you. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.